You will not believe this.
I wasn't supposed to cry in public. Not in a restaurant. Not on a blind date arranged by my board like a PR bandage after a messy quarter. But the moment I saw him, tired eyes, cheap jacket, hands that looked like they'd carried groceries and grief, my throat tightened in a way money never fixed. He didn't recognize me. That should have felt safe. Instead, it felt dangerous. The waiter asked if we wanted water. I nodded too fast. My hands shook around the glass. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was the headlines. Then he smiled, small, polite, like he'd learned not to expect much, and it punched a hole through my defenses. I could have ended it right there. I could have lied. But I leaned forward, lowered my voice, and whispered the one sentence I swore I'd never say out loud. His face changed instantly, like I'd reached into his chest and squeezed. And for the first time that night, I realized I wasn't the only one who came to this table already broken. The invitation wasn't romantic. It was formatted like a calendar hold. Dinner, 8 p.m., private patio, discreet. No heart emojis, no cute winks, just my assistant's clean font and the board's quiet pressure hiding behind it. I stared at it longer than I should have, like the letters might rearrange themselves into a real choice. After the last quarter, after the headlines, after the one photo of me stepping out of my car with my jaw clenched like a villain in a tabloid story, the board decided I needed to look human again. Their word, not mine. Just one date, my CFO had said earlier that week, smiling like it was a harmless vitamin. A safe one, curated, normal. Normal. As if I still knew what that felt like. I told myself I could handle a dinner. I negotiate 8-figure deals without blinking. I fire people with a steady voice and then throw up in my bathroom afterward where no one can see. I do hard things. So why did a blind date feel like a cliff? Maybe because a blind date isn't about control. It's about being seen. I chose a place across town, an outdoor cafe patio under an awning, warm heaters, low light, the kind of spot where people talked softly and no one stared too long. My assistant had already checked the angles, the privacy, the exit routes. I hated that part of myself, the part that planned escape before arrival, but I'd learned the cost of being unprepared. In the mirror, I looked fine. Hair smooth, makeup minimal, black coat that could pass for elegant or don't touch me, depending on who you were. I practiced my polite smile until it felt like a mask again. Then my phone buzzed. A message from my assistant. He's confirmed. Name Daniel. Single dad. Works 2 jobs. Very grounded. Please be kind. Please be kind. As if kindness was a switch I could flip on for optics. I locked my phone and sat very still for a second, listening to the quiet in my penthouse. The kind of quiet that costs money, the kind that never feels like peace. I thought about canceling. I thought about telling them I had an emergency, a meeting, a migraine, a collapsing economy, anything that sounded important enough to justify my fear. Instead, I picked up my keys. In the car, the city lights smeared across the windshield in thin lines of gold. It had rained earlier, and the streets still shone like polished glass. At a stoplight, I watched a man cross the road holding a child's hand, small backpack, bouncing steps, a laugh that made my chest ache for no logical reason. I turned my eyes away. By the time I reached the cafe, my pulse had settled into something manageable. The hostess recognized me anyway, even in the dim light. Her eyes widened for half a second before she remembered to act normal. "Right this way," she said too brightly. The patio was warm under the heaters, but the air beyond the awning was damp and cool. Raindrops clung to the edge of the fabric like they were hesitating. Inside, people were talking and clinking glasses, living lives that didn't feel staged. My table was at the far side, half hidden by a plant wall, discreet, safe, and empty. I sat down and placed my phone face down on the table like a boundary. My fingers tapped the wood, once, twice, without permission. I stopped them. A server brought water. I thanked him. My voice sounded steady. That was my only talent sometimes, sounding steady. Then I saw him. He stepped onto the patio with a slight pause, like he wasn't sure he belonged in a place where the napkins were folded like little sculptures. He wore a charcoal jacket that had seen real winters, not just parking garages. Dark hair, tired eyes, light stubble, hands that looked rough in a way money can't imitate. He scanned the tables, and when his gaze landed on me, he didn't light up like a fan. He just softened, polite, careful, like he was used to being judged before he spoke. I stood, because that's what you do when you want to look human. "Daniel?" I asked. He nodded, stepping closer. "Yeah, and you're—" He stopped himself. His eyes flicked, not to my face, but to the space around me, as if he was checking for cameras, for traps, for the punchline. Then he looked back at me and offered a small, respectful smile. "Hi," he said, like this was just dinner, like I wasn't a headline with a heartbeat. And for the first time all week, my throat tightened for a reason that had nothing to do with the board. Because the closer he got, the more certain I became of something I couldn't explain. I had seen him before. Not in the news, not in a meeting, not in any place that mattered to my life now. Somewhere older, somewhere that still hurt. And when he pulled out the chair across from me, the sound of it scraping gently against the stone felt like a warning I didn't know how to listen to yet. Daniel sat down, like he'd learned to be careful with space. His hands smoothed the menu once, a reflex. "Sorry," he said, "traffic." "It's fine." My voice came out too polished. I hated that it followed me here. He ordered tea. When the waiter left, a quiet pause settled between us, warm under the heaters, cool where the rain hovered beyond the awning. "So," he said, "we just talk like normal people?" A small laugh escaped me. "I guess we try." He smiled, relieved, and looked at me with attention that wasn't calculating. It made me feel exposed. Up close, the familiarity sharpened. Not his face, his posture. Shoulders slightly forward, like he'd carried a sleeping child upstairs too many times. "What do you do?" I asked. "Delivery in the morning, maintenance at night, apartment complex." He shrugged. "Nothing fancy." "I didn't ask for fancy," I said. His phone buzzed. The screen flashed, "Lila, school." He stared at it a beat too long. "You can take it," I said. He hesitated. "It's my daughter's school." "Take it." He answered, turning slightly away. "Hi, yes, I'm her dad." "Okay, I can be there in 20. When he hung up, he braced like he expected me to be annoyed. "She's okay," he said quickly. "She forgot her inhaler. They're being strict." The word inhaler pulled an old image into my mind. Someone wheezing in the dark, my mother's panicked hands. I swallowed. "If you need to go," I said, "go." "I don't want to be rude." "You're not," I replied. "I'm glad you answered." Rain started again, soft on the edge of the awning. Daniel stared at the table for a second, like he was deciding whether to apologize for his whole life. "I'm sorry," I heard myself say. He frowned. "For what?" "For being distracted," I lied. He nodded like he understood a different answer. "It's okay," he said. "You look like someone who's been holding her breath." "Where did you grow up?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "East Harbor," he said, "near the old laundromat that used to be open all night." My fingers tightened around my glass. East Harbor wasn't just a place on a map to me. It was damp clothes, cheap soup, and nights you count pennies by the sink. My stomach dropped. Then he added almost casually, My mom used to say you can always tell when someone's been waiting for bad news. I went still, because my mother used to say that too. When the tea arrived, Daniel wrapped both hands around the cup like it was more than warmth, like it was permission to stay. "I'm not great at these," he said. "Dates?" I asked. "Anything that involves sitting still." A tired smile. "My day starts at 5. If I'm not moving, I feel like I'm forgetting something." He reached into his jacket to silence his phone. A small pink hair tie slipped out and looped around his fingers. He froze. "Sorry," he muttered, shoving it back like evidence. My chest tightened. "You don't have to apologize for being a dad." He blinked at me, then looked down. Most people don't say it like that. He opened the menu, and I watched his eyes flick to the prices. Quick, automatic, like checking a rearview mirror. His jaw tightened. "You can pick anything," I said, too fast. He shook his head. "I'm okay. I like knowing what I'm agreeing to." That sentence hit me harder than it should have. I'd agreed to things my whole life because I could afford the consequences. Daniel looked like he couldn't afford a surprise. The waiter returned. Daniel ordered the cheapest item without meeting my gaze. When the waiter left, he exhaled like he'd completed a test. "Lila's 8, he said suddenly. "Asthma, smart, talks like she's 30. I pictured the name on his screen, the school, the urgency in his voice. "She lives with you?" "Yeah." His mouth twitched. "Her mom's around, just not steady." No bitterness, just a simple fact. It made my throat ache. He rubbed his thumb over a pale line on his ring finger, where a band used to be, then tucked his hand away. Outside the awning, rain started again, soft as static. Somewhere inside the cafe, a couple laughed. I envied the ease of it. "I shouldn't be here," Daniel said quietly. My pulse jumped. "Why?" He hesitated, then forced it out. "Because I don't know what you expect, and I don't want to be someone's charity night." Charity. The word stung, because it sounded like my board's plan wearing a human face. I leaned forward. I didn't come here for charity. Daniel held my gaze for a beat, then looked down at the table. And that's when I saw it. On the side of his hand, a faint smear of marker, a tiny star, drawn quickly, the kind a child makes while waiting. A star I recognized, because I used to draw them too, back when I thought they could protect you. Daniel's star, faded ink on the side of his hand, kept pulling at my attention, like a thread I didn't want to touch. "You okay?" he asked. I realized I'd been staring. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just thinking." He nodded like he understood the kind of thinking that isn't safe to say out loud. The food came, steam rising in soft waves. I barely tasted mine. Daniel ate like someone who'd learned to do it quickly. Small bites, eyes scanning his phone once in a while, thumb hovering near the screen in case the school called again. "You really grew up in East Harbor?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "Why?" I kept my voice light. "I did too." He paused mid-bite. "You don't look like East Harbor." The comment wasn't cruel. It was honest in the way tired people get. I let out a breath that sounded too thin. People don't always look like where they came from. He leaned back slightly, studying me now, like he was trying to place a face in a half-remembered hallway. "My mom used to take me to that laundromat," he said, "the one I mentioned. It was always loud, always smelled like bleach and coins." My fingers tightened around my fork. I could smell it too. I could hear the machines thumping like a heartbeat. "My mom worked nights," I said, and the words surprised me with how easily they came. "I used to wait there sometimes." Daniel's eyes softened. "Yeah, I know that wait." A quiet settled between us. Not awkward, heavy. I looked past him, toward the rain and felt something old rise in my throat, something I'd spent years paying to bury. In boardrooms, I could talk about risk and growth. I could say necessary restructuring with a calm face, but I couldn't talk about the girl I used to be. I left when I was 18, I said. My voice was steady, but my chest wasn't. Got a scholarship. I told myself I was never going back. Daniel nodded slowly. Good for you. It should have felt like praise. Instead, it felt like a knife, because I had gone back, not with my body, with my signature. East Harbor had been a line item on my screen 6 months ago, a redevelopment package, a cost-saving initiative, a neat set of numbers that looked clean until you remembered the numbers were people. I swallowed hard. My fingertips went cold. You ever... I started, then stopped. My mouth was dry. You ever feel like you worked so hard to escape something, and then one day you realize you became the thing that can hurt others? Daniel's expression changed. Not alarm, not judgment, recognition. He set his fork down carefully. Yeah, he said. That's why I try to be gentle when I'm tired. My eyes stung so fast it scared me. I blinked, once, twice, like I could outsmart it, but the tears came anyway, quiet, humiliating, hot on my lower lashes. Daniel didn't reach for me. He didn't ask invasive questions. He just pushed the napkins closer, slow, like he didn't want to spook me. And in that small, simple act, my control cracked, because he wasn't treating me like a CEO. He was treating me like a person who'd been holding her breath for years, and I knew, with a sinking certainty, that the truth I was carrying had his name on it, whether he knew it yet or not. The napkin in my hand turned damp before I realized I was crushing it. Daniel waited, not impatient, just present, like he'd decided I was allowed to fall apart without paying for it. I'm sorry, I said again, because it was the only word that fit in my mouth. He tilted his head. You don't have to keep saying that. But I did, because the truth wasn't floating somewhere above us. It was right here on the table, between the cups, between the quiet. It was in my signature, in my decisions, in the clean language that made ruin sound professional. I reached for my water, and my hand shook. The glass clicked against the wood. Daniel's eyes flicked to it, then away, like he didn't want to make me feel weak. You said you work maintenance at an apartment complex. Yeah, he said. It's steady enough, most weeks. And you live where? He hesitated, then answered. East Harbor, still. My lungs tightened. Of course he did, of course. I could hear my board's voices in my head, smooth and distant. We're revitalizing the district. I could see the slide deck, the map with bright new colors that looked like hope until you understood what got erased. Daniel gave a small shrug. Rent's cheaper there. Lila's school is close. It's not... He stopped, then smiled like he was used to defending himself. It's home. Home. I felt it like a bruise. My phone was face down, but I could still see it in my mind. The email I'd approved months ago. The final line that mattered most. Proceed. A breath caught in my throat, sharp as glass. I leaned forward before I could lose my nerve. Daniel, I said, and his name sounded too intimate. Can I tell you something, and you promise you won't laugh? He frowned. Why would I laugh? I don't know, because it's insane. My voice dropped. Because it's cruel. His eyes stayed on mine. Just say it. I looked around the patio. The rain, the heaters humming, the couple 2 tables away laughing softly. A normal night for everyone else. I leaned closer, like the words themselves could shatter if the air touched them, and I whispered, I'm the one who signed the redevelopment order for East Harbor. For a second, nothing happened. Then Daniel's face emptied out, like someone had pulled the floor from under him. His mouth parted, but no sound came. His shoulders went rigid, his hands flat on the table like he needed something solid to keep him from tipping over. I kept going because stopping would be cowardice. "I didn't know names," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I didn't see faces. It was numbers and contracts and timelines. But I signed it, and now people are being pushed out and—" Daniel blinked once, slow. His eyes shined, not with anger, something worse. Recognition. "Laundromat," he said quietly, like he was tasting a memory. My stomach dropped. He swallowed hard. "My mom used to take me there because our heat kept getting cut off. When it shut down, she never found another place close enough. She stopped going out at night." The words hit me like a slap I deserved. Daniel looked down at his hands, and I saw the star again, fading ink, a child's quick comfort. He breathed in, shaky, and his voice broke in a whisper of his own. "My mom died last winter, in that apartment, waiting for the city to call back." He lifted his eyes to me, and the heartbreak in them wasn't loud. It was quiet, and it was absolute. For a moment, the patio noise blurred. Forks clinked somewhere, a heater clicked, rain hissed against the awning. But at our table, the world narrowed down to Daniel's hands, flat on the wood, like he was holding himself in place. I expected anger, a raised voice, a sharp sentence that would finally make me feel the weight of what I'd done. Instead, Daniel went very still. His throat worked as he swallowed. His eyes stayed on me, but they weren't accusing. They were grieving. "I didn't come here to do this," I whispered. My lips felt numb. "I didn't know it would be you." He let out a breath through his nose, slow and shaky, like he was trying not to break in public. "You knew it would be someone," he said quietly. That sentence landed harder than any insult. I opened my mouth, then closed it. My chest felt tight, like my ribs had shifted. I couldn't find a defense that didn't sound disgusting. Daniel's gaze dropped to the table. His thumb rubbed over that faded star again and again, like a habit, like a prayer. "I'm sorry about your mom," I said. The words sounded small. He nodded once, still not looking at me. "Yeah." The silence stretched. I could feel eyes on us from other tables. Maybe not, maybe just my paranoia, but I suddenly wanted to disappear, not because of reputation, because of shame. "I can help," I said, and hated myself the second it left my mouth. Daniel finally looked up, not furious, just tired. "With what?" he asked. My brain reached for solutions the way it always did. Money, resources, contacts, something I could throw at the damage to make it stop bleeding. "Relocation assistance," I said quickly. "A lawyer, a different place. I can—" He lifted a hand, palm out, gentle. Not a stop sign, more like a parent calming a panicked child. "Don't," he said. My throat tightened. "I'm trying to fix it." Daniel's eyes softened in a way that made me want to cry again. "You can't fix my mom," he whispered, "and you can't fix what it did to us to keep waiting for things that never came." My stomach turned. The air felt cold despite the heaters. His phone buzzed again. Lila, school. He flinched like it was a slap, then grabbed it too fast, answered immediately. "Hi, yes, I'm on the way. I'm close." He paused, listening. "Okay, I'll be there in 10. He hung up and looked at me with something like apology, like he still thought he owed me politeness. "She needs me," he said. "Go," I told him. He stood, chair scraping softly. For a second he hesitated, eyes flicking over my face like he was deciding whether to say something that mattered. Then he spoke, low enough that it felt like another whisper. "You're not a monster," he said, and it somehow hurt more. "But you're not innocent either. He reached for his jacket, then paused. His gaze dropped to the napkins I'd crashed, to my shaking hands. I hope you do something real, not this. And then he walked away, fast, purposeful, into the damp night, disappearing beyond the awning. I stayed seated, staring at the empty chair across from me, my heart pounding like I'd just watched something precious leave the room forever. The chair across from me stayed warm for a minute after Daniel left. It shouldn't have mattered. People walk out of dinners every night. But this wasn't a dinner anymore. It felt like a judgment I couldn't appeal. The waiter came over with that cautious half-smile staff use when they sense tension. "Would you like anything else?" "No," I said too quickly. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone who still had control. He placed the check near my elbow. I stared at the numbers like they were part of the same system that had crushed a neighborhood into a spreadsheet. I reached for my card, automatic, then froze. Because I suddenly understood what Daniel meant by charity night. If I paid and walked away, it would be my usual ritual: transaction, exit, relief. I'd leave with my conscience lightly rinsed, like money could scrub guilt. My fingers hovered, shaking. Then I noticed something on the table, half hidden under the edge of the menu. A small folded paper, not restaurant paper, something cheap and thin, creased hard like it had been opened and closed all day. I unfolded it without thinking. A child's drawing, a stick-figure girl with a too big smile, a star above her head, and in uneven letters, "Dad, inhaler." My throat tightened so fast it hurt. He hadn't been prepared for the date. He'd been prepared for being a father. I pushed my card back into my wallet like it had burned me and stood up. The air beyond the awning was colder than it looked. Rain misted the sidewalk, turning streetlights into soft halos. Daniel was already a block away, moving fast, shoulders forward, phone in hand. Not running, but close, like every second cost him something. I took a step after him, then stopped. What was I going to do? Call his name? Offer help? Offer money? Insert myself into his crisis so I could feel useful? I held the paper in my hand, the little star staring back at me like an accusation. A car passed, splashing through a shallow puddle. The sound made me flinch. My chest felt too tight for the air I was breathing. Back inside, I paid the bill anyway, quietly, fully. No speech, no flourish. The transaction didn't absolve anything, it just closed the table. Then my phone buzzed. Assistant. "Where are you? The board moved the meeting to tonight. They want a statement ready by morning." A statement. I looked down at the crumpled drawing in my hand, at the child's handwriting, the urgent reminder, and I realized with a sick clarity that I didn't need a statement. I needed a choice. The conference room smelled like espresso and disinfectant, too clean for what we were about to do. My CFO didn't sit. He hovered by the window, phone in hand, jaw tight. Legal was already there, a tablet open like a shield. My PR director slid a folder toward me without meeting my eyes. "We've drafted options," she said. "Soft, empathetic, no admissions." No admissions. I stared at the folder and saw Daniel's face instead, how it emptied out, not angry, just gone. "What happened tonight?" the CFO asked. His tone was careful, like he was talking to a storm. I could have lied. I'm good at controlled truths. But my mouth felt heavy. "It was a blind date, and he lives in East Harbor." Silence. Legal's eyes lifted. "Do not tell me you discussed the redevelopment." "I told him," I said, and it sounded like a confession. PR inhaled sharply. "Why would you do that?" "Because I couldn't keep swallowing the truth and calling it strategy." The CFO's voice dropped. You realize what this could become. One post, one picture. CEO confesses to single dad. Single dad. The words sounded like a headline already. Legal leaned forward. We can contain this if you don't escalate, if you don't contact him again, if I don't act like a human, I said, too quietly. PR kept her voice smooth. Act human in a controlled way. Donation, fund, scholarship, something clean. Clean, like the slides, like the language, like the lie that you can rebuild a neighborhood without breaking it first. I opened the folder. Photos, draft statements, suggested phrases. We hear the community. We're committed to a brighter future. I could practically hear the applause. My hand went cold. I closed it. I don't want a donation, I said. The CFO blinked. You don't want to look generous? I don't want to look anything, my voice shook. I want to know what we did, on the ground, not on paper. Legal's tone sharpened. This is not the time for field trips. But I'd already decided, quietly, without their permission, the same way decisions get made when you stop asking for approval. My phone buzzed again. A notification I hadn't turned on in years. A weather alert. Overnight rain, localized flooding in low-income districts. East Harbor. It felt like a sign in the smallest, cruelest way. Not spiritual, just reality tapping the glass. I stood up. Cancel my morning interviews. PR's eyes widened. We can't. Watch me, I said. As I walked out, the CFO called my name like a warning. I didn't turn back, because all I could see was a folded piece of paper on a cafe table, a child's handwriting, and a man disappearing into rain, carrying a life that my signature had made heavier, and I knew exactly where I was going at dawn. I drove myself, no driver, no tinted glass, just my hands on the wheel and the city waking up in gray light. The closer I got to East Harbor, the more my stomach tightened, like my body remembered before my mind did. The first thing I noticed was water. Not dramatic flooding, just the kind that never leaves. Puddles along the curb, dark stains climbing brick, storefronts with for lease signs. The laundromat Daniel mentioned, shuttered now, windows papered over like someone tried to erase it. I parked 2 streets away and walked. People looked at me the way I used to look at strangers in better coats. Quick, assessing, not hostile, just careful. I pulled my collar higher, suddenly aware of how expensive Simple still looked. Outside the elementary school, parents clustered near the gate. Kids spilled out, loud with relief. And then I saw him. Daniel stood by the curb with his phone to his ear, shoulders tense. Beside him, a small girl in a pink beanie swung her legs on a low wall, inhaler in hand like a prize. Lila. She had his eyes, and a brightness he looked like he fought to protect. He hung up and crouched in front of her, checking her breathing with practiced calm. His hand, star faint on the side, smoothed her hair once, gentle and automatic. I didn't approach, not yet. I watched, and shame shifted into something sharper, responsibility. A woman near me nodded at the standing water. They say they'll fix the pipes next year. Same thing every year. Daniel lifted Lila onto his hip and started walking. I followed at a distance, feeling ridiculous, like I was trespassing in a life I'd helped make harder. They turned onto a narrow street of tired buildings, paint flaked, mailboxes dented. A notice was taped to a door. Inspection, vacate if uncompliant. At the bottom, my company's logo. My throat closed. Daniel disappeared into a stairwell. I stood on the sidewalk, staring at that logo until it blurred. My phone buzzed. PR, legal, the board. I didn't answer. Instead, I took photos. The notice, the water stains, the cracked sidewalk. Then I sent one message to my assistant. Find me the names, not numbers, names. When I looked up again, Daniel was at a second-floor window, curtain pulled back an inch. Our eyes met. He didn't wave, he didn't smile. He just stared, like he couldn't decide if I was real or if consequences had finally learned how to walk. I'm proposing a moratorium and a rebuild plan that doesn't remove people to make the numbers pretty, I said. On-site repairs first, rent caps tied to income, relocation only if residents choose it, and paid for fully with return rights. Legal's face tightened. That's not standard. I don't care, I said, breath shallow. And if you won't approve it, then I'll step down and say why, publicly. The room shifted. Not outrage, fear. The kind money feels when it can't buy silence. After a long minute, the chair's voice went thin. If you do that, you may never lead again. My stomach dropped. The cost arrived, clean and final. Then I won't, I said. That afternoon, I went back to East Harbor with a printed order. Simple language, no corporate poetry. Daniel opened his window again. This time he came down. He didn't invite me in. He stood in the stairwell, blocking the door like a boundary. I didn't come to apologize, I said softly. Not with words. I came with this. I handed him the moratorium notice and the number of a tenant rights attorney. Paid for, no strings, no NDA. His eyes moved over the page. His jaw tightened once. You think this fixes it? No, I said. My throat burned. I think it's the first real thing I've done in a long time. He looked at me, really looked, then glanced back toward the stairs where Leela's small footsteps sounded above us. I don't forgive you, he said quietly. I know, I whispered. He held the paper tighter. But thank you for not making me beg. I nodded, breathing through the ache in my chest. As I turned to leave, rain started again, soft, steady, and for once it didn't feel like punishment. It felt like proof that something could still change, one hard choice at a time.
If this story stayed with you, the next one is already on your screen. Click to keep watching and subscribe for more real stories like this.